Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome back to another video here in the brand new FlyByWire A380X in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. In our video today, I'm going to be giving you a very quick startup guide so you can get the engines fired up and get into the air as quick and simply as possible. But as well as this, I will also be answering and addressing the most common questions that I have been asked regarding this aircraft. Things like the onboard airport navigation system, TCAS, transponders, brake to vacate, all of that stuff, and things in the brand new MCDU. If you're used to flying the Airbus A320, everything is very similar, but a lot of things are in a different place. So there are different nuances that we need to address. I will do this as fast as we can because I know you'll be itching to get this aircraft into the air for your first flight. Now, if there are any questions you have that I might miss in this video, then please do leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, so let's quickly go through the setup of the A380. If you're familiar with Airbus philosophy and you're familiar with the A320, for example, you should find a lot of this quite familiar. In the first state, let's make sure we've got a ground power unit available. Obviously, select this through the EFB, and when that is available, you'll see on the overhead that you have got the 4 external powers available. Now, these need to be turned on, preferably in the order 2, 3, 4, and 1. The reason for that is because that particular order will result in a shorter start time for all of our display units. Now, the A380 comes already equipped with GSX Integration, which down here you'll find if we go to third party, and you can GSX fuel synchronize and payload synchronize as well. I had a little bit of an issue with this when I first tried it. For some reason, fueling didn't want to work, so I would recommend at the moment, if you're having issues, turn off GSX fueling, but you can turn on the GSX payload synchronization. That seems to work rather well. However, for our flight today, we'll leave it turned off and we're just going to sort of let it all be done instantly for speed. We've got a flight plan already prepared in SimBrief. This is the same flight we live streamed the other night, but just going through some of the finer points in setting things up. Once that's all done, quickly head on to the overhead, go through the usual Airbus flows, which is basically a matter of extinguishing the white lights. So crew supply, make sure that's turned off. We want to start the ADIRs. I'm not going to go through a full professional setup at this stage with engine fire tests and all of that. Navigation lights to be on, and we can have the batteries turned on as well. Fuel pumps can remain off at this stage if you haven't yet refueled. Once refueling has completed though, we can pop all of those on. I do believe there is actually an aircraft specific SOP. Some aircraft allow you to refuel with them on, some with them off, so that will be entirely your choice. Nav lights are on. We also want to make sure the emergency exit lights are armed. No mobiles, pop that onto auto. Seatbelt signs off before refueling, on after refueling. QNH is all set, and we should see down here then the IR alignment will be in 7 minutes. You can change the IR alignment time in the settings. You can change that to instant if you wish. We'll leave that for the time being. Okay, so the first thing that is probably going to get your attention is the funky looking MCDU. Yes, it's all electrical, it's all it's touchscreen in the simulator, so this may confuse a few of you, but not to worry. It is still essentially a same kind of MCDU and flight management system that you get in your Airbus A320. It's just a little bit more modernized. So if we have a look through the different menus, there's 2 ways to access them. We've got the menus here at the top, but we've also got similar looking menus down here at the bottom. Things like the init page, the flight plan, performance page, nav page, etc. So all very, very familiar if you're used to Airbus anyway. So we're going to go to our init page, which you can select down here, or once you've got FMS1 page, you can then go and find the init page here, both the same, and you can then do the company request. That will then pull in your information from SimBrief as long as you have already gone over and in the third party options linked your SimBrief account, which I have. So that should then pull it through. Once it says received the company flight plan, click that again and you can then insert it. So that's the first thing done. You would then go through and just fill in all of this as per usual. Now use your keyboard for this if you wish, your actual physical keyboard. I can type in the headwind for the flight and that's done. You can use the keys down here, but obviously we've got the keyboard in front of us, which isn't entirely unrealistic either because we actually have a keyboard tucked away in here. So go through the normal setup and you should find everything as per usual quite intuitive. So working through this, we then obviously want to go to our flight plan page. This again, you select your departure, and from here then you can find with this menu, you go through departure, select the runway, select the SID, transition if there is one, temporary flight plan, insert temporary. That's done. Down into Boston, runway at 22 left for our arrival. We were on the ILS approach because obviously we've got different approaches available as well. Make sure you select the right one. We had no veers for our arrival and we were on the Ocean 5. Insert that and insert once more to confirm, and that's it. We've got our flight plan all done, just as you'd be familiar with in other Airbus aircraft. We'd then need to go on to our init page, and this then is where you want to start putting things in like the fuel and payload. So in order to get all of this information, your zero fuel weight can be found on your SimBrief flight plan. Your zero fuel weight center of gravity, that is found on your payload page. So we can pop that here. I'm just going to choose instant for the boarding. So we're now all fully boarded. Go to the fuel. Make sure that's set as well. I think for this flight we chose about 100 tons. So again, set to instant, and that should be done quickly as well. There we are, that's done. So now if you go to payload, your zero fuel weight CFG is this value here. To find your overall takeoff weight CFG, that is this value here, and simply switch between them there. Transfer those values across into the relevant fields, and then that will be your takeoff performance page all completed. Okay, so that page is all filled out. The next thing to do is make sure you go to your performance page. This is where you would set your V-speeds and your toga or flex, what flap settings you're going to be using, anti-ice, all of that stuff as per usual. But there is no performance calculator available for the Airbus A380 at the moment. So in terms of getting these figures, your SimBrief operational flight plan will provide you with those. So you can pop in figures from there. There is no other place to get them. You can't sort of double click like you could in the A320X in order to get them. So just grab them from there, or if you really wish, you can just make up something a little bit sensible depending on the conditions. So use toga, flaps 1. Then the trimmable horizontal stabilizer, that is set to your gross weight CFG, which is 40.6. So type that in here, and then you are all set on that page. Moving quickly on then to the engine start. Well, this is pretty straightforward. You do need the APU to be running, so make sure the master switch is on, give it 3 seconds or so, and then hit the start button. That will then fire up the APU. That'll take a couple of minutes to begin, and you can monitor that down here. Okay, so once the APU is up and running, the green available light will be showing here. It's actually at this point that you would run all of the engine fire tests. We're going to skip that for the sake of this quick tutorial video. Make sure APU bleed is on, beacon light is on, and then we can start the engines. So that's done with the engine starter. Make sure that's turned to ignition, just like the A320 if you're familiar with that. But the difference here is then you want to wait at least 10 seconds between the engine ignition and then the engine starter switches. Now the reason for this is to check that you don't get a reverser fault ECAM appear down here. Now I'm not actually sure if that is modelled yet in the FlyByWire A380, but it's good practice because that is something that can happen. Alright, it's been more than 10 seconds, so we're going to start engines 1 and 2. That can be done together at the same time, and obviously then just monitor the engine start parameters up here as they slowly start to build. Once engines 1 and 2 have successfully started, then just repeat the process with engines 3 and 4. Now the A380 comes with an onboard electronic checklist. This has been included in the FlyByWire as well, which you can access by pressing the checklist button down here. Brings it up here, and of course then to navigate through that you might need to just zoom out a little bit to see it, but then you've got these up and down arrows just there. In order to select one, simply press the tick button. Doesn't matter which one, there's one for the captain, one for the first officer, and in selecting that, oh, just a little more message there. Let's just bring the checklist back up. There we go. In selecting that, we've got the before start, we've got the after start. You can then go through this, see, so anti-ice not required, pitch trim, neutral, and we'll go through this, and you can again navigate and press the tick button when you have cleared the relevant action. There are some systems which are monitored automatically by the systems, for example the seatbelt sign. So if I just go back to one of the earlier checklists for the before start, for example, if we go, we can see the beacon light, you can see that is green, it's already monitored that that's turned on, so we don't need to tick that off. Parking brake is on, and all the speeds have been checked. Checklist complete. We can go through this, and once it's done, it'll just return you to the default page. So working your way through the checklist, good thing to do. Make sure that you've not forgotten anything. Now obviously before pushback you'd also have your transponder turned on. In order to find that, go down to the surveillance page. There you can enter your squawk number, again using the keyboard, turn transponder on to auto, and then once that's turned on, TCAS will become active for you, so standby TATRA, and there you can select the normal above and below. So that's how you access both transponder and TCAS settings. So now with the engine started, then we do the usual Airbus after start flows, which consists of popping the engine mode selector to ignition. APU bleed would come off, APU master would come off. Of course, prior to this, we would have disconnected the external power on the ground. I've not done this for this video, but there we go, that's now done. And the other thing to do then at this point is arm the spoilers and set the relevant flap settings. So flaps 1 for our departure today. After this, we would then set the trim. Now you'll notice that for those familiar with Airbus, the trim wheel is missing. That is because we now have an electronic pitch trim switcher, a toggle button up and down. I find this easier then to set a keybind to, because in order to monitor this, you're going to have to be looking down here underneath the primary flight display. Takeoff THS, we want it to be set to this value, which is 40.6. So we're going to move this, and there you can see, moving this down here. Oh, a bit too far. There we go. So now we've got the takeoff THS set for our departure. On the upper ECAM display then, the usual takeoff checklist, which is part of the TO config. Seatbelt signs are on, ground spanners are armed, flaps set to take off. Auto brake needs to be set to RTO, which is actually a push button now, so that's done. And then the TO config test, which is down here. select that, and hopefully then everything should be green and we would be good to go. TO config normal. Fantastic. So now let's have a look at a really neat feature that I know many people were asking me about yesterday, and that is the onboard airport navigation systems, which we will see on our navigation display. In order for this to work though, you do need a Navigraph subscription, which you can link up in the third-party options under the settings page in your EFB. So to access this, move the navigation display to plan mode, and then we are going to zoom in all the way down here. Now this takes just a minute or two before it actually loads, as it's pulling in the information and the maps from Navigraph. Once that's done, then you'll be able to see it just here. We can then continue zooming in like so. Just continue turning this around, and there we are, stand 594. With the mouse left click, you can actually move this around, and this is really cool because obviously it makes taxiing this aircraft, knowing where you're going, seeing the charts there, really neat. And also your runway that you are meant to be departing from should have a nice big green arrow ticked in next to it. So yeah, that's really nice. Just another way for confirming where it is you're going. Now the A380 sadly doesn't have an active working weather radar. That is not an issue with the Fly-by-Wire team. That is a limitation of the simulator itself, bit like all of the other aircraft, A320X, Phoenix A320, etc. So sadly, yes, the weather radar, whilst you can turn it on, won't actually do anything. However, the terrain radar will, and we turn that on just here, and you'll see in a moment that will populate. Remember though, you will need SimBridge to be running in the background from your Fly-by-Wire installer in order for this to work. Okay, so a couple of little tips then once we are in flight. If you need to go direct or hold, that is pretty straightforward. So for example, if we just scroll down at the moment, I've just spawned in here for this, so we've just passed Tusky. Let's go direct to Urosco. Click this, and then from present position direct to direct insert, and that will take us then direct to the waypoint that you want to go to. If we want to hold at the waypoint, simply select the waypoint, press hold, and then you can set your own inbound course, left, right, etc., that kind of stuff, and you can actually see the little circle. It is there, so that hold is available to you if you want it. Let's remove that though, as I don't want to hold, and erase the temporary flight plan. Alright, so finally then, let's have a look at the brake to vacate function. So in order to set this up, we'll need to go back to our plan mode. We can then zoom right in. This is Boston Airport, and again you would just select this either by using any of these buttons here, or you can obviously select it and type in Boston, then display the airport. And then what we're going to do is we are going to choose the runway we're going to land at. You can see there's already a big green arrow because we've already told the aircraft in the flight management system that this is the runway that we have told it we're going to land at. If we decided to choose runway 22 right, for example, it would tell us that that disagrees with what we've told it in the flight management system. So let's choose the correct one, 22 left. Once we've done that, if you look down the runway, you'll see there are some magenta lines. There is a dry line, there is a wet line. Now the idea is to choose a taxiway after the wet line that you want to exit. In order to do that, make sure you choose an exit that the A380 is actually capable of taking. You'll find this in your Navigraph charts, the A380 approved taxiway routes. Now I know from flying this flight the other day that we can't use the Mike exit. Instead, what we have to do is vacate onto Bravo. So you'll see we can actually select this here, left click with the mouse, and then that is where brake to vacate is going to slow the aircraft down so that we can actually vacate the runway off on taxiway Bravo. Once that has been selected and set, moving over here, you can select on the auto brake the brake to vacate option. You'll know if you've done this right, because if this hadn't been selected, if you move this to brake to vacate, it would spring back to disarm, because if you haven't set it correctly, then you can't arm brake to vacate. And that's it. That is the brake to vacate function all set up and done. Now, a quick note as well about the new audio control panel. Some of the newer Airbuses are getting this kind of radio panel as well now. It's pretty self-explanatory and rather intuitive. So we've obviously got COM1, COM2, and the standby frequencies over here. We can simply type in the frequency that we want to pop into the standby, and then to transfer that across, you press this button just here, transfer it back. Again, same thing. Basically, this is the toggle button between the standby and the active. To actually communicate on this frequency, then you need to make sure that this is highlighted in green. They're very important, of course, if you're flying on the VATSIM network. Also worth noting as well that just like the Airbus A320, on the navigation page you don't need to enter things like the ILS frequency, course, etc. It pulls all that information in automatically when you select the runway you're going to be landing on and the ILS approach in the flight plan page. When it actually comes to landing this aircraft, it is quite straightforward. It is worth noting there's a slight difference between this aircraft and the A320 family. You want to start the flare for the landing at 40 feet rather than 30, just because of how higher up you are compared to the A320. And note that you won't find you'll need as much back pressure on the side stick, because unlike the A320, from 30 feet, the nose of this aircraft doesn't automatically start to lower itself down. That is not a feature on this aircraft, so too much back pressure, you might find yourself floating a little bit, so just a tiny bit and you should touch down with ease. So hopefully that will be enough to get you going and enjoying this amazing freeware A380 aircraft from the amazing FlyByWire team. As I said earlier, any questions or comments, please do leave those down below and I'll try and get back to those as soon as I can. If you have found this video useful, please don't forget to leave a like, and of course make sure, if you're not already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any of our future videos, and of course live stream flights. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you again soon in the next one. Bye bye for now.